Hey everybody, I'm Maria Campbell, founder of Cooks Who Care, and we have an important discussion to share with you. Something that we value very deeply is inclusivity. Something that isn't prioritized at this moment, not because maybe we don't want to, but because we don't have the time. We are sharing stories about women and leadership. There is a situation at hand. We have empty seats, empty job positions, and conversations that need to be discussed. And instead of saying, I have an open door policy, we should first listen. We've recorded several individuals from front of house and back of house in the food industry because we wanted to hear what people had to say. I just hope that our audience does too. It's not a he said, she said conversation. It's about getting involved and actually opening our ears and minds to how other people feel when they're working and doing their job. Please follow us. Please comment. Please share what it is that's going on, because the only thing that we want to do with this conversation is to start normalizing new ones.
For a long time, I was afraid to speak up because for so many years my voice was ignored or looked at like I would say the same thing as my male equivalent, but my words didn't mean as much as his did. And it would take him hearing what I said and repeating it to like actually be heard. And it wasn't like, it never was about like who gets the credit for it or who had the idea. It's how it gets done and when it gets done. Is this the best way to go about things? And so for so many years, it's just like I have to explain something to somebody else for them to tell them this is what we need to do.
But it's frustrating because when you speak out, then you're that one that is like causing the trouble. But realistically, it is hard when you have children and you're trying to work in this industry. It's very difficult. But I love it. I mean, I wouldn't change it. I love my kids. I love my family. I love my husband. I love my job. It's just different for a woman, for sure.
Women have a tendency to be dismissed with their ideas, and I have found as a leader that it's challenging to earn the trust of the women that work for me, to let them know that I'm trying to really truly create an inclusive work environment. And it always takes a long time to get the women who worked for me to trust me, to let them know that when they speak up, I'm not going to dismiss their ideas or put them down or create an exclusive environment. And so I always find it challenging as a male leader to train the women that worked for me to truly speak up, because it's so culturally prevalent to have women not speak up. I always found that it was really interesting that how long it took for me to create that sort of environment in the kitchen.
Women can't get beyond a certain level in their career, whether that be chefs or servers. I think no one wants an older female server. I think that's just kind of this weird thing. Like, men can age, but women can't. And I also feel like for women chefs or general management leadership, there's no maternity leave. So a woman's resume is going to look different from a man's.
I've always wanted to be included just so I knew what was going on. And like, I feel like I need, like, inserting myself into like that boys club. It got me one step closer to being listened to every once in a while. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But like, that years and years and years later, I still find myself doing it every once in a while and acting that way, just a little bit more like masculine or a little bit more aggressively, you know, not wearing makeup so much and not like doing my hair and not letting them see me look like a girl, because then they would look at me like I was a girl, and I never wanted them to see me as like a woman. I wanted them to see me as like their boy. And like, it's difficult to have, it's like almost like an identity crisis, like growing up, like wanting to do this for my whole life and wanting to be like this great chef, but then also like wanting to be a beautiful woman at the same time, it's like hard. And I found myself my whole life finding like this crisis with myself because I never wanted anybody at work to see me with my hair down or makeup on or wearing a dress or, you know, looking in any way attractive or feminine, because it made me think, and I know that happened a lot, that they would look at me differently and they would think of me differently, and that my ideas wouldn't matter as much anymore because all they would see is like that pretty girl or that girl that wears those dresses, or look at her cleavage, or like they would remember those things. And it's definitely happened a bunch of times, and you know, once it happens you can't like undo it.
In general, I try to use my voice to be an advocate for the voiceless, for people who we generally as a society don't listen to. You know, women, queer folks, transgender people, you know, minorities, immigrants, because people listen to me. I'm a white dude. And so, again, I just try to listen a lot, and that has influenced my worldview pretty tremendously. And I try to lead that from a leadership role in the kitchen as well, because the more voices that you have in the kitchen, the more diverse ideas you're going to get, and the better you're going to be as a business. And when it comes down to business, that's what it's all about.
I think the idea that for women, it's kind of this idea of there's a lot I feel like that's expected of them, but anytime they speak up, then they get punished for that. And I think that I work with the majority of women in my role as a front of house manager. Everywhere I've worked, it's mostly women, and they're almost always the most capable staff members. But I also feel like when they start to voice for wanting more, or for they're not approving of something, I do think it's kind of like, it's like there's this ingrained kind of culture of the rocking the boat. That if anyone has an issue, for like to create an environment where you can talk about whatever the issue may be.
Even as women, we take what men say as more valid. So I'm trying to learn to switch my way of thinking as well, that I've probably done it to other women and not realized it. So now I'm trying to become more aware that if a woman says something, and it could just be partially the way that we say it, because we are more hesitant.
I feel blank because you blank, and I would like you to change this. I do that with like 6-year-olds on the playground, but we don't do it past the age of like maybe the 8th grade. And like, we think it's stupid to talk about our feelings because that makes you a pussy and that makes you weak. But what's interesting is when we put each other down in those contexts, we're always using female body parts, which then makes it like, well, if you talk about feelings, that's feminine, but then we're asking men to do it in relationships when they get into their like late 20s. And we're not supporting.
I do see emerging a new model of leadership that is more female, maybe, again, across gender lines. It doesn't have to be women necessarily, and I think that's what we should aim towards. And because sometimes women, even when they're in leadership positions, they use a male model of leadership, right? Because maybe that's the only option for them, right? They have to behave like men to really be taken seriously. And so I'm always interested in how can we think this new model of leadership? How can we deal with our own internalized misogyny to own who we really are as women and create this new model for leadership?
Trying to fit in, and I've struggled in my leadership role to like speak up, because like as a gay male in a kitchen, it's a very like macho, like, you know, egotistical driven, and I've never fit in. I've always kind of like stuck in the background, been an observer, and like learned from other people's mistakes. Also being the youngest child, that was like very helpful to just like fall in the back and like don't do that. And so just like I struggled to like speak up when I know like something's going wrong, because you don't want to rock the boat, you don't want to like piss anybody off, especially more so like some male employees that I had. And it was just because like it went back to like trying to fit in with this like social construct of like, you know, you can't talk about feelings. I feel and I talk and I like want to talk about everything, and that's so opposite from like the industry culture that I came up in, which is like, you know, you have to just like suck it up. Like I've had someone tell me like, I'll kind of like PC it for the camera a little bit, but you know, like keep your head down, look at the cutting board like you're getting fucked, and don't pick your head up until the work is done. And it was just like, all right, like, you know, like you said, like if you say something that you want and it like, oh, I can't say anything then, and you just like keep your head down, because then you're on family meal for a month and a half, or you don't get like the shifts or whatever, you're like, so I think we really need to just kind of like deconstruct and rebuild.
People want to change, but it takes action and it takes time, and nothing happens overnight. Even one conversation isn't going to change their mind frame. 2 conversations aren't going to change the mind frame, but what it is a constant hitting on the basis and making sure that when you have these conversations that you speak intelligently and that you speak with authority and that they listen to what you're saying, and the words that you use are the ones you want them to remember. So it's taking out that the adjectives that you don't need them to take in, like swearing at them or calling them names or getting angry when you don't need to be angry. Taking a deep breath and realizing that the things that you're going to say to them right now in the heat are the things that they're going to remember. And do you want them to remember you being angry, or do you want them to remember the words that, do you want them to remember that you have a point and that's why you were upset, not that you're just upset?